In today's video, I'm going to show you how to add depth to any flat embroidery design using EL software tools. Inner Circle members in your classroom, download the lesson files below this tutorial, and YouTube viewers, check out the EL digitizing software in the link in the description. Let's get started. Here we have a horse design that was created utilizing a fill stitch. You can see it's all going in one way, which is horizontal, and these are normally created for logos, for chest designs, and I'm going to show you how you can turn this flat design, add some details, add some effects so that instead of it looking too flat, it has a lot of dimension, it looks rich with those threads. Let's get started. The first thing that I'm going to do on the program is create a new design. In the new design, I'm going to click my backdrop to load my backdrop right here, and I'm going to select the flat design that I currently have, which is right here. Now, I am going to select my image, and to do so, all you have to do is click on your backdrop icon again and click select backdrop to enable image editing. With my image selected, I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to go under properties. Now for me, this design is huge right now, so I'm going to switch the width and the height to 2.5 inches because I believe that this design would more than likely go on a chest logo. So I just made it 2.5 inches by 2.5 inches, and the actual design will become 2 inches in height. So it's a pretty tiny design. I'm just going to disable the grid, and here we go. We can see a clearer view of this design. Now the tools that we're going to use for this design are going to be the run tool as well as the Classic Satin. So on your keyboard, you can press 1 for the run tool and press 2 for the Classic Satin. The next step is going to be to change the color, and that's just so it's easier for you guys to see what I'm doing and start creating this design in a nice red color. So here we go. I'm going to zoom in using my scroll wheel, and I'm holding spacebar to pan around. Now, we're going to leave the smart join enabled because that's going to help us out a lot, but I am going to disable my snap to anchors because I don't really need those for this design. Like always, before you start digitizing a design, you almost want to picture a roadmap in your head. And for me, I like to think of this design in 3D. So for me, when I'm looking at it, I know that the horse is looking at us. So the face would be at the front, this leg right here would be at the front, this leg right here would be at the front, and this one would be behind the torso of the horse. Same thing with this tail right here, it would be in the back, and same thing with the hair, it would also be behind the neck of the horse. So knowing that, we kind of get an idea of the order in which we're going to digitize this design. I believe I'm going to start somewhere over here. I think that is a good idea, so let's get started. Utilizing the Classic Satin, I will input my first point, so point, and then counterpoint, and I can see that this is just a little bit too thin, so I'm going to exaggerate these stitches that I'm doing point counterpoint so that I can do at least 1 millimeter, and I'm just left clicking and left clicking to create the point and the counterpoint to do the angles. So I'm going to press enter, and you can see that I've made my first shape right here. Next, let's do the same thing for this tail, so point counterpoint, and now I'm going to right click, and the reason I'm right clicking is to create a curve point counterpoint. So right click, right click, right click, right click, and you can see I made a curve like that. Now I'm going to press enter, and now I have that next shape. Let's keep going. Let's add a point counterpoint. Now I'm not really sure if this whole thing is the buttocks of the horse. So what I'm going to do is just add a little shape right here and continue creating these. I'm going to just ensure that I'm doing at least 1 millimeter. You can see under the width, it is currently 1.7. So I'm watching out for that one. Now it's 1.8, and I'm just doing point counterpoint. There we go. Length 1.3, 1.2, and 1.8 point counterpoint, 1.8, 1.8, 1.5, and I'm just left clicking and right clicking. Now, as you can see, I'm connecting everything. I'm trying to find a way where each of the shape is touching one another. And that's where the smart join comes in. It will take care of ensuring that the start, so that's where the stitches start, and then stop, where the stitches will end, are close together. That way the design isn't jumping and trimming all over the place. It just helps save a lot of time and a lot of embroidery headache. So really amazing feature to have enabled. And here we go. I'm doing point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint, and I'm just right clicking to make curves. And now I'm going to press enter to finish that last part of the hair. Awesome. So you can see we finished the tail. Now it kind of looks a little bit like the horse is on fire right now, but that's mainly because the color changes. Once we switch it back to black, it should look completely normal. Next, on my keyboard, I'm going to switch to my run tool. As you can see, as soon as I click one, it goes to the run tool. And the reason is because I don't want to continue digitizing this part right here. Because as I just said, the order in which I'm doing the design, I want to make sure that the parts that are on the front are going to be stitched next. So for example, right here, I believe that I want to digitize this part next. So all I'm going to do is where I just finished, and you can see the scissors are right here to trim. If you don't see them, make sure you click the three dots at the top and go to view commands. Make sure that that's enabled so you can see your trim. This is the last spot that the design is going to stitch. So I'm going to press a point right there. You can see I left click to put a point down. I'm going to put a couple points, and I'm just going to end right here and press enter. Now, what I just did is I made a connection from this start, and it's going to end here. That way, this whole shape that we just created is still going to be embroidered in one go. It's not going to trim. It's not going to stop. So now I'm going to press 2 on my keyboard. So I switch back to my Classic Satin, and let's keep doing what we're doing. So I'm going to do point, counterpoint, and you can see that now the shape is a little bit bigger. So it's saying 3.6, 3.7, point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint. And if you haven't seen what point counterpoint does, you're basically creating satin stitches with the angles included. So it saves a lot of time in you having to set the angles afterwards, and it lets you have multiple widths on that complex shape in which you're creating. So that's it. I'm going to press enter right there. And there you go. We still have one solid shape. You can see there's only one trim right here. Perfect. Now I'm just going to add this one little bit right here. I know it technically is on the back, but it is so tiny that I really don't mind having that right there. Awesome. Next you could create this leg right here, but I really don't want to because I'm trying to respect the perspective as much as I can. So I'm going to continue here. I'm still under my Classic Satin, and I'm going to start right here, point, counterpoint. Here, I'm going to switch to curves to curve it a little bit, and then I'm going to go back to straight, point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint, and then curve, point, counterpoint, like so. Every single point and counterpoint that I'm creating, I'm setting an angle. So for example, right here, if I want the stitch to go this way at a 35, 40 degree angle, this will determine where that angle will go. So I wanted to maybe be this angle right here. So I'm going to put my point right there, and then point, counterpoint, enter. And you can see that that angle was created. Look at the other stitches down here, how they're turning. They're turning in the way in which I created them, which is really awesome. It just saves so much time. Now we have finished 2 of the legs. So where do we go from here? Do we want to create the rest of the legs? I believe that before I create any of the legs, I kind of want to take care of the rest of the hair. So I'm going to press 1 on my keyboard, switch back to my run tool, and press with my left button to put my point and just connect all the way here. Now, you may be asking, hey, like, what about these stitches right here? The reason I'm not worried about it is because we're gonna do a satin stitch on top of it after we're done creating all of the connections. That way, the connections, which are these right now, will be hidden underneath the ultimate satin that's gonna go on top. Don't worry. Just as long as you're planning out your design in your mind, you can sort of visualize where the connections can go underneath. like a subway system, maybe. So here I am going to exaggerate a couple of these only because they're very small and I don't want this hairs to just be a little bit too small. Now here you can see that there's just a lot of strands, and I'm gonna go a little bit faster now because it's very similar point counterpoint, but the main difference is that I'm just trying to imagine a couple of the hair strands. You can see there really is no clear direction, especially when we get to the bigger part of the body, which is the torso. You kind of have to imagine where those shapes will go. And something that really helps me out too is to visualize or to look up images of a horse and see what does the horse look like in real life and how can I create it so it looks similar to that. So there you go, very quickly. Now it really looks like it's on fire, huh? We're trying to set up the colors and everything. Next, I'm just going to do these two ears right here because it's so cute. So the ears, let's create them really fast. And because we're so close to the smart join, I don't really think that I need to even create a connection. You can see there is still only one trim so far in this whole design. Now that we finish all of the tinier details around the design, the next step is up to preference. You can either connect all the way down here and finish digitizing this leg and then create this whole shape on its own. So you know what, why don't we test that out? I'm just going to undo so you can see what I did. I'm pressing 1 on my keyboard to switch back to my run tool, and I'm going to make which seems to be my last connection for this design. Perfect. And I'm going to press number 2 to switch back to my classic satin. So I'm going to press left click to create my inclination points. And I'm just gonna do point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint, all the way up to there and press enter. There you go. Now, if we were to go with this method, I wouldn't really use the classic satin. Instead, I would use the tool right beside it, which is satin right here. And the main reason why I would use classic as opposed to classic satin is because this shape is definitely a lot more complicated. So let me show you the steps on why it's a little bit better. As opposed to point counterpoint like the classic satin, it actually works more like the rest of the tools, which is artwork or run tool, where you just kind of create the object and then you press enter and then you put your inclinations. So I'm just gonna go back or press escape to cancel all of it out, and here's what's gonna happen. I'm going to start, for example, right here, do a left point, so put 1 point right there, okay? Then I'm going to do a right to do a curve, 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 and I'm just gonna keep pressing curve to start making these curve points all the way around the shape. Now I did a left and a left to create a straight point right there, and then a curve, and now straight to go this way. Here we can curve it a little bit, and then let's go curve all the way around. Now here I am overlapping a little bit because I want to make sure that these stitches will go underneath, which is the design that's going to go on top. And as I go down, I'm just pressing left and right, left to create straight points and right to create curved points. Always make sure to practice with the tools that you're using, because the more you practice, the better and faster you get at it. See, now I'm all the way back here. I did a whole perimeter of the design. So all I'm going to do is press enter. And you can see, didn't create any stitches because the next step is to create our inclination points manually. So if you hold on to the left or the right or anywhere around the perimeter and you click and drag, you'll see that there is a plus and a minus sign. That is the inclination points. That is going to be the angles that we're setting for the shape itself. So with the classic satin, we were doing this manually when we did the point counterpoint, whereas now we create the whole shape and then we start adding those afterwards. So I'm just clicking and dragging, clicking and dragging, clicking and dragging, clicking and dragging, and click and drag, and I'm going to press enter. And now you can see there's a start and a stop. I'm just going to make sure I press enter one more time, and now we have that done. We have the whole shape completed. You can see that we have auto split enabled, because when we're working with satin, you want to have auto split enabled, especially when you're creating stitches above 7 millimeters. But that is something that you'll learn more in the theory as opposed to the practice. That is all we had to do to create the major shape. So now what I'm going to do is select all by clicking the select all button or Control A, and let's change it back to black color. Oh man, look at that. Now let's just disable the backdrop so we can see what that looks like. And I think this looks amazing. Now I'm going to grab all of it by clicking and dragging or selecting all of it. I'm going to Control Copy, or up here to copy, so I can copy that design, and I'm going to bring it here besides the other one. And I'm going to do Control V or paste, which is up here, to paste the design from the other side. Let's move it right beside it and see the difference between the two. This on the left looks good. It's not a bad design at all, but it looks very flat, versus the one on the right just has that extra depth, it has that extra 3D look, and of course this is just digitizing. So we won't really know which one is better until we embroider it. How about we save these two files and then we send it over to the embroidery machine so we get an awesome result. To do so, all I'm gonna do is save my file. So I'm going to click Save As, and I'm going to save this as my horse logo test. Always make sure to save it as a JDX first so that you can always go back and modify your file. So I'm going to click save, and next I'm going to click save as one more time, but I'm this time going to switch it to a Tajima or a DST because that is the machine that I'm going to embroider on. But depending on your machine, you might want to choose PES, JEF, HUS, and so on. So for me, DST is good, and I'm going to save that. Let's go embroider these two designs and see what that looks like. And that's the embroidered result of both of these horses. You can clearly see the difference in depth and detail of each of those designs. Now, what amazed me even more is that the one on the right, which has more detail, actually has less stitches. So if we take a look at both of them, this one has 3,200 stitches, whereas this one only has 2,500 stitches. Now, I did make one modification on the right one, the detailed one, and all I simply did is add a zigzag underlay. So if I were to click on this big shape, I forgot to add an underlay. So all you do is go to your properties, and under your properties, as you go down, you can find parallel. So I made sure to add a parallel underlay to it. I really enjoy when there's a lot of detail in embroidery, and I would love to know what you guys think. Which one looks better? And would you like to learn how to do the one on the left? If so, please let us know, and we can always create a tutorial on that. Inner Circle members, don't forget to download your lesson files below. Not a member yet? Join the Inner Circle and get access to exclusive bonuses, hands-on training, and everything you need to master embroidery digitizing. Click the link in the description to get started. Want to keep learning? Check out these tutorials next and take your embroidery skills even further.